people who think bureaucrats aren't schmucks, and gentlemen. We're going to go over in this edition various numbers from the last 60 years or so on bureaucratic employment at the state and local level, the federal level, various facets of that, federal civilian, federal military, state and local education, etc., general government services, to prove that over any long period of time, like say 15 years, the number of bureaucrats continues to increase at a massive pace, as you can see from the graph, and I have all the links underneath the video as per usual. As you can see from the graph, state and local employment, government state and local employment, has more than, or has effectively quadrupled since 1950. And just in the last quarter century, it has increased 33%. So we have no shortage of state and local bureaucrats. Federal military employment, that has had several peaks and valleys. It has steadily declined, though, over the last 20 years. It could go a little lower. I think we still have, as I've said before, the Constitution doesn't condone standing army, so we could shrink the size of our army, and of course all the military excursions we have overseas. It takes a lot of people to do that, so there could be, we could get rid of a lot of bloat there. Federal civilian employment, as you can see, no shortage of that since 1950. In the last 20 years, it's been basically flat, though. But I'll get into some nuts and bolts of this right now. And we'll look over general government employment, federal government employment overall, and then the civilian facet of that, and then overall state and local employment and education employment. This particular graph, first one here, goes from 1993 to 2000. As you can see the numbers there. Government employment, 18.2 million. Federal, 4.8 million. Under Clinton, federal employment, the number of bureaucrats went down. I should also mention, it kind of started under Herbert Hoover during the Great Depression when he hired a lot of new federal employees. FDR was also good at that. But when it really started getting bad was the 60s under LBJ, when he created the welfare state. And of course he had all these federal agencies which had to hire people. Then you have to have agencies to oversee those agencies and make sure they're not wasting money. And they still do. So that's when it really got its teeth. So you can see 18.2 million there, 4.8 for federal. Civilian is 2.1. State and local, 13.4.5 million. And education, 6.4 million. And what you'll see is the lulls in hiring, they're usually pretty short and not very pronounced. Although the recent Great Recession that continues under Hussein, there was a lull in the action. But if you look at it over any 15-year period, we always get more and more bureaucrats. So government went from overall government went from 18.281 million to 19.1 million under Clinton. Federal went from 4.8 to 4.1, almost 4.2. So you see that shrunk there. Civilian payrolls, they also shrunk. State and local, however, not so much. As you can see, massive increases. In education employees, at the state level, as I've gone over in other videos, there were a lot of states that had their pupil enrollment decline, but yet they continue to hire more administrators and more teachers. So the class sizes got even smaller to continue that trend. So we'll score one for Bill Clinton and his Republican Congress for not continuing the federal hiring binge. Under Bush and Obama, not the same. Some people might say, well, look at Obama's numbers is actually going down. Well, again, look at it through any 15-year period. You'll see it's up. And, of course, the Great Recession, they really had no choice. But as you can see at the state and local level, they're not doing that. Basically, it doesn't matter if it's feast or famine, a lean or a fat year, a good year, bad year, rain or shine. There's more government bureaucrats. General government, almost 20 million. This is from 2005 to 2012. As you can see, general government almost 20 million, now to 20.5 20.15 million. Federal still up over that trend. As you can see, it did start to decline as the Great Recession continued. We still have too many bureaucrats. Civilian, though, is way up from 2005, although it has seen a slight decline recently, just a very slight one. Again, this is 2005 to 2012. State and local over that time frame is actually not up much, but still a little bit, as it even got hit by the Great Recession. Some states did actually hire more bureaucrats through the recession, but overall it didn't go down. Education is still, again, is up over that time frame, and I would wager in 5 years we'll be back to business as usual, where more and more bureaucrats will continue to be hired. So as you can see there, we have no shortage of bureaucrats, especially state and local hiring. Now, our last piece of business, we're going to go over some numbers from the Mercatus Center. Going to look at the percentage of state jobs that are funded by federal contracts. You know, this is the Keynesian stimulus, where the federal government doles out money for jobs, and all it does is actually just redistribute wealth. It doesn't create any wealth. What percentage of the jobs in a given state have those jobs funded by a federal contract? What percentage of them are public sector and federal contract jobs as a percentage of total non-farm payroll jobs? And you'll see the big offenders here, who they are. The leaders. And Virginia, you'll see the main offenders here. Most of them are in the top 11. As you'll see, Hawaii is one of them. Alabama, Connecticut, Mississippi, Maryland, New Mexico, and Virginia are the big offenders. Federal contract funded private sector jobs. Virginia and Maryland benefit from the largesse coming out of Washington, D.C., because there's so many agencies in Washington, D.C., many of them either unconstitutional and or unnecessary, and a lot of defense contracting going on too. So the federal government there is continuing that Keynesian stimulus. You know, our big military-industrial complex does create a lot of jobs, but it doesn't create any wealth. So Virginia and Maryland, and this isn't a Republican or a Democrat problem, it's a government problem. And I think we don't have two parties in Washington, we have one. It's called the government party. As a friend of mine, Quartov Larry, said, it's Republicans and Democrats teaming up against we, the people. So as you can see, Virginia, New Mexico, Maryland, Mississippi, Alabama, and as you'll see as we go through these, Connecticut as well, and Hawaii, and Alaska also. Some are worse than others, but you can see who the main offenders are, and you can see what the national average is, which ones are well above the national average, and which ones are not. Some benefit more than others, as you can see. Now we got public sector and federal contract jobs as a percentage of total non-farm payroll jobs. Look at that. New Mexico, Virginia, Alaska, Mississippi, Maryland. Look at all those states who have more than 20% of their total non-farm payroll jobs. They're either because of federal contracts or they're a bureaucrat. You can see the national average there. Some of these, and the main offenders, of course, as I mentioned at the start of this, are the ones that really pull the average up. But look at the national average, it's 19.2%. That's the average. Almost 1/5 of every job in an average state, that job is there because of federal contract dollars and or they're a public bureaucrat. 1/5 almost. Do you see that? That is, amazingly, California isn't one of the highest ones. I figured it would be, but it isn't. Texas isn't one of the higher ones either. Now we get to real private sector jobs as a percentage of total non-farm payroll jobs. And again, I will stress this is not a Republican or Democrat problem. It's a government problem. There's a national average, 80.8%. Some do much better than others. Texas, 81%. So slightly better than the national average of where you'd want to be. There's California. Shockingly, I figured California would be much higher, but it wasn't. And there's the main offenders, like I mentioned in the start of this video. There's Hawaii, Alabama, and I should throw Wyoming in there, Maryland. You see all those states, three of them are really close to having 30% of those jobs because of government, or 30% or more. Virginia, New Mexico, Mississippi. So you can see there that there are several states that And then our next one, you'll see, look at these states who have lost jobs. The states, look at Maryland, how many more they've lost than the national average. If they weren't sucking off the federal teat, it would be so much worse there as well. Virginia, there's another one. It would be so much worse there if it wasn't for all those federal dollars. Mississippi, how much worse would it be for them if they didn't have all these public sector jobs and jobs funded by federal dollars? There's New Mexico. How much worse would it be there? Look at how bad their economy is, and they still have they're sucking off the federal teat. There's Alabama also. So, and I put the links on there. You can look through this, peruse it at your own leisure. But as you can see, there are several states who are, despite all these jobs funded with federal dollars from taxpayers in 49 other states and all these public bureaucrats, which lowered the unemployment rate, their economy would be even worse than the train wreck it is right now. So as you can see, some states are worse than others, but some people try to say, oh, it's only them Republican states that suck off the federal teat. No, it isn't. There's states that are controlled by Republicans at the state level and states that are dominated by Democrats at the state level that benefit from this. And I personally think it should stop. It doesn't matter if the majority of the voters put Republicans or Democrats in office. So all those people are doing is trying to prove that their party doesn't suck off the federal teat more. It started in the 1960s when it really started to gain steam. And who's going to, Washington bails out all these states with all these jobs. Who's going to bail Washington out when they go under? So for what it's worth, there you go. There's no shortage of bureaucrats. Government is always hiring. Have a nice day, and don't thank me now for the info.